Imagine this. You are the leader of a country in some part of the world. Maybe you're a just leader, beloved by the entire country, passing reforms, improving conditions for the common man, and cracking down on corruption. You are a people's champion. Or maybe you're a sick son of a bitch, killing anyone who protests your rule or forcing them to work in camps with shit-tier conditions while exploiting the country and its people to benefit you and your friends so you can make the best movie in history. So after a long day of hard work, you sit in your office to relax. And suddenly, a shit ton of your own soldiers, including your best general, September Penis Che, arrive in front of your palace. So you say,
Muy buenas tardes, mis estimados sagos de wea. Ya, weón, en serio. Oye, weón, ¿y por qué no vemos una película del...
Ay, ese plan me parece bien choro, weón. Pero antes de eso, solo quería que te vayáis para algún lugar para traerme alguna weá.
¿Y a dónde querís que me vaya, weón?
Por la chucha.
After that, these shit ton of soldiers break down the door and quickly march in with General Penis Che leading the way. You go to your guards and tell them that...
Vos, weón, tenés que sacarme a mí y a mis compañeros al toque de acá, ¿ya?
Vale, señor presidente, ¿ves a lo que hay allí, tras el camino? Debes de ir allí para escaparlos.
You immediately realize after he utters these words that it's extremely unlikely you will leave this palace alive. Now you were surrounded on all sides by your own soldiers, and the general gives his firing squad the order to shoot exclusively at your beloved testicles, so you suffer as much as possible. Afterwards, the soldiers lift up your corpse and throw said corpse directly through the window. Now you're in heaven, or hell, or you're a ghost, or you reincarnated into some monstrosity on a distant planet, or maybe you're just in the void. Whatever you think, dude. And you think, well, boy golly gee, what did I do for this to happen? Well, my friend, that's why I'm here. This video is dedicated exclusively to leaders like this so that they can prevent a terrible fate like this. Using historical examples, this part is dedicated to the general causes of a military coup, and to seeing the faults some leaders around the world, but mostly in South America, have committed to be deposed. Specifically today, we will take a look at 7 examples from 20th century from 7 different countries. Except we're not. Because if you didn't see the Spanish video or the update video, yeah, that's gonna take a long ass time. So we're just splitting that up. Today we're just talking about Argentina. I'll get into that in like right now. Juan Domingo Perón is a textbook example on how to get couped by your own military. Many of the most influential groups in Argentina hated Perón. The church hated him, the conservatives hated him, some of the socialists hated him, the liberals hated him, NATO hated him, and more than anything, the generals hated him. Of course, not everyone hated Perón. In fact, many of the people adored him. A key supporter being the General Labor Confederation, or Confederación General del Trabajo, abbreviated to CGT. I mean, CGT. Fuck! One of the largest labor unions in the world. But his controversy has stuck to his legacy up until the modern day. The other thing was that at the time, Argentina had already suffered a military coup 25 years earlier. Now, with that being said, there was a lot of stuff going against our Peronito, but at the same time, there was a lot of stuff that he had in his favor. For example, the Argentine economy was extremely high in the 1950s. In 1950, the Argentine economy was actually the 12th largest in the world, up until 1954 when things were getting a little bit worse. As well, his history with the military gained him a bit of support from the military, and like I said, he helped with the coup of 43, being part of the Group of United Officers, or Grupo de Oficiales Unidos, or GOU. But now the military hated him because he had an ideology that the other generals didn't like. And also there was a lot of other stuff that they didn't like about him. But him, with his grand charisma and his ambitious vision, won the support of the people of Argentina, making a shit ton of enemies in process. So there was a large division between the military and, well, more than that, in between the entire country, between Peronistas and anti-Peronistas. With all of this tension, some shit was about to go down. And because of that, a lot of attempts to overthrow Perón happened. The most famous, that wasn't successful, was the bombardment of the Plaza de Mayo. During a reunion of Peronistas in the plaza, dissident members of the military organized a surprise attack similar to that of Pearl Harbor, in which the Air Force would bombard the Casa Rosada, where the executive power of the government lived, as well as the Plaza de Mayo, or Plaza of May. The Marines were also supposed to do something, I guess. But when the planes took off from the Moron Air Base, the Minister of War, Franklin Lucero, advised the Peronists of some strange movements coming in from the base. After that, they escaped into a bunker under the Libertador building. The Marines then tried to capture the Casa Rosada, but loyal soldiers and armed partisans defeated the Marines after a chaotic shootout in the plaza and surrounding streets, ending everything up in more than 100 dead on both sides and hundreds more dead civilians. But after all the death, all the chaos, the Peronistas defeated the traitors and Argentina remained free. Bitch! Jaja. Una lesión importante en el poder de la gente argentino. Hasta el 16 de septiembre. ¡Órale, pendejos! ¡Mira mi cumpleaños! ¡Viva México, cabrones! When Lieutenant General Eduardo Lonardi instigated another coup d'etat. This time a successful one, which ended after 1 week of combat. Well, shut the fuck up, Jimmy John. I'm gonna explain. To explain, let's go to the distant past of 5 days before, during the procession of Corpus Christi, where a union of diverse anti-Peronista groups, led by dissident members of the Catholic Church. Remember them, Jimmy John? Of course not! Because you have a fucking strong-ass case of ADD. You can't listen to jack shit without checking if Sly Pigeon is uploading a new video. Please like. I have a shit ton of thirst that can only be satiated by your content. The joke is that Sly is actually imprisoned in my interdimensional basement, editing random parts of the video. Right, Ozzy?
He's not lying. He said he had chocolate milk, and now he won't let me out. The address is 1235 Asia.
You're so funny, Ozzy. Don't worry about it. I'm paying him for his work.
Yeah, in Venezuela and Poland.
Shut the fuck up, slave! Let's continue. These dissident members of the Catholic Church, with other conservative groups in the country, had their qualms with the Perón administration. Primarily his policies to separate church from state. But that wasn't the main reason that much people were congregated there on the 11th of June, 1955 in Buenos Aires. The reality is that Perón wasn't exactly a saint.
¡Qué escandaloso! Está diciendo que el pibe invitó a criminales de guerra a refugiarse en su país. Esos criminales de guerra siendo nazis literales. No fue un santo, ay. ¿Qué ni esperar de eso?
Sí, gracias, tienes razón. He had a lot of ties to the Axis powers in the Francoist dictatorship in Spain, and only declared war on Germany on May of 1945 due to pressure from the Allied powers. Before that, for his neutrality and his fascist sympathies, Argentina was not invited to the Act of Chapultepec, an agreement that was very important in the history of the Americas, which promoted the cooperation between the American states, deciding that Argentina could be part of this agreement if they declared war on the Axis powers. Another thing was censorship. Perón was an authoritarian, censoring and imprisoning his political opponents.
just like he's imprisoning me.
What did I say? Perón also had some military enemies since the beginning, being incarcerated by the order of other military men after the coup of 43, and only being freed due to the efforts of his wife, María Eva Duarte, better known as Eva Perón, as well as the CGT. But Perón did the exact same stuff, denouncing and censoring the universities and their students for their protests against him. Because of this, Perón replaced many of the professors in these universities with intellectuals who were more Peronist, and exiling these professors who were more critical of his administration. Many of these Peronist groups wrote messages such as, "For the fatherland, kill a student." Sound familiar, carnal? He also used his authoritarian tendencies to make sure that he had only the most loyal leaders in, say, the CGT. When the leader of the Union of Telephone Workers, Luis Gay, won the election for the position of Secretary General over the candidate who was chosen by Perón, Ángel Borlengui. Guy was expelled from the CGT 3 months later, being replaced by a friend of Evita named José Espejo. Many of the newspapers anti-Perones, like La Vanguardia, a socialist newspaper, and La Prensa, a conservative newspaper, were also censored. The same happened to artists and intellectuals like Victoria Ocampo, Luis Zaslavsky, and Libertad Lamarque, a rival of Eva Perón. Of course, political opponents also were victims of censorship and or worse. Two particular examples being vocal syndicalist Cipriano Reyes and student protester Ernesto Mario Bravo. All of the censorship was the reason why Perón had so many enemies, and it wasn't helped by the chaos of the procession of Corpus Christi when communists and clerics alike joined together against Perón, burning the Argentine flag and raising the Vatican one in its place. As well, the Peronistas burned a shit ton of churches after the Plaza de Mayo's bombardment, and I couldn't talk about the cult of personality around Evita that was happening right after her death in 1952 due to cervical cancer. What I'm saying is that Perón had a shit ton of enemies, and we all know how this is gonna end. TLDR, the internal division in Argentina was gonna end in a civil war, and Perón knew this. So when he was forced to choose between a civil war, which would lead to a shit ton of Argentines dying, possibly including him himself, or escaping on a gunship to Paraguay, well...
Presidente Perón, hay demasiados de ellos. ¿Qué vamos a hacer?
After this, Argentina became a military junta. Well, more than it was before. But Perón, who was living in Madrid at the time after taking refuge in Paraguay and a couple other places, used his charisma and the large portion of Peronistas still living in Argentina to regain presidency in 1973, before immediately dying a year later with his new wife, Isabel Perón, taking his position as president for 2 more years. Until she was also overthrown by military men in 1976. But that's the story for another day. Anyway, moral of the story?